The Scarlet Plague by Jack London was a very interesting read. I originally picked it up and became interested in it because it was post-apocalyptic. It was, that sort of genre that's always interested me and drawn me, and so I knew I would probably like it because of that. But it ended up being not at all what I expected. Typically, a post-apocalyptic, book or show or movie, there's action, there's a lot going on, there's violence at times. Um, Scarlet Plague by Jack London was not that, and it was not what I was expecting. In fact, location-wise, it's very minimal. It stays in the same place for the entirety of the book. The entirety of the book is actually just a single conversation between Grancer, who is a man who was alive in the world before the Scarlet Plague hit, and then he's having a conversation with his grandchildren, who were born into the Scarlet Plague. So it's just this contrast of different personalities, of different lives, really, and throughout these conversations, you see how different these two groups of people really are, and that's truly what it is. It's a conversation about how we're different, how our view on the world changes, how the way we live changes based on the world that we grew up in. And it's much less a story about what the world could have been. It's much less an apocalypse story and more a story, a critique even, about the condition of the modern world. And that idea was so interesting to me. Again, not at all what I expected, but I ended up falling in love with that concept. These characters, we saw their lives, but not from the sense of actually seeing it, like how you may in a traditional book, but instead hearing them talk about it, hearing Grancer talk about his life. The book doesn't pick up at the opening of the apocalypse and everyone's getting sick and no one has any idea what's going on. We don't fully see the full scope of that chaos, but instead we see decades and decades and decades past that point, and we hear Grancer simply talk about it. So essentially, in certain moments, we are his grandchildren. We are hearing him tell stories, and maybe we're not even believing it. We're seeing it like how they were, and other times we're like Grancer, reminiscing on what was, wishing that things could be better, teaching younger generations what we know in hopes to get to that point. And you can definitely relate to either side for sure. All in all, it was a fascinating read. I'm glad I read it. I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed finding myself in this world. Jack London is an incredible writer. I loved the story, and it was an incredible read.